Next up, let's actually create the stars and make the component dynamic by reacting to a click event. So let's create a brand new component here. So function star, because the JSX code here is actually going to be a bit complex. But for now, we will want to return just the icon itself. So I actually already included that icon hidden here in the CSS file. So if you scroll all the way down here, you will find some code. Here it is. And so let's grab all of this comment. So all the way until the end, cut it from here and paste it down here. Then we can close the sidebar and this one. And so here we have the star icon as an SVG. So let's start here with the full star. So just this SVG, copy that and paste it here. And then let's use that star here. So instead of this, we will simply include the star. And then let's also define the key prop and let's simply use I. So the current index, which is not ideal, but at least then React doesn't complain anymore. Give it a save and nothing is happening here. Let's try that again. And let's inspect what we have here. So I was not expecting this. So we have indeed our stars here, but they appear to not have any height. And so let's try to fix that right here. So I will just wrap this SVG into a span element. Let's cut that from here, place it at the end. And then I will again define some style object out here. So let's say const star style equals, so width, let's say 48 pixels. And let's do the same for the height. Let's give it a display of block property as well, and setting the cursor to a pointer so that they behave a bit like a button. And so then we should also define the role property here for accessibility. So this is just HTML for accessibility. It has nothing to do with React. Okay, and then our star style. And there we go. So now we have our nice stars. Now they might be a bit too big here, but we will later allow the user to set the size. I'm just noticing that we have maybe enough space between them, and so let's remove this gap right here. Great. Now let's actually make our component dynamic, meaning that whenever we click on one of these stars, we then want to display the current rating here in this paragraph element. So, since we now want the UI to re-render based on an event, so we want something to happen on the screen, we need state. So let's create a new state variable called rating, of course, by using useState. And by default, let's set it to 0. Okay. Next, let's use that state. So as a second step, we include the rating prop right here. And so then we see 0. While that's maybe not so ideal, because if the rating is still 0, that simply doesn't mean that the user hasn't basically rated yet. So they haven't done anything. And so here, let's say that we either want the rating or an empty string. And so thanks to short circuiting, we will then move here to the second part of the operator whenever this is a falsy value. But of course, if we had 1 here, then we would see that 1. Now maybe just to clear the confusion a bit, let's remove these other 2 star ratings here, so working with just one. And so where do we now need to listen for the click events? So basically, when the user clicks here, then the rating should become 1. If they click here, then it should become 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what this means is that we need to listen for the click event on each of these stars. So let's start by defining a onClick prop here, which we will then later receive inside the star. So here we will now define a function which will actually set the rating. So let's say set rating, and then whatever the current index is plus 1. Because remember that array indexes start at 0, but our rating should start at 1. Okay. So now, of course, nothing will happen right now because we actually need to listen for that event on an HTML element. So like an JSX element. So what that means is that here we need to now accept that onClick handler. So this function that we defined right here, and then use the onClick prop right here to then actually listen for the event and react to it. And if this is a bit confusing, then let's maybe change the name here from onClick to onRate. And so then it becomes really obvious that this is actually our own prop. So this is our own handler function. And we could, of course, even have created that separately. So onClick should be onRate. And so this is basically what we have been doing all the time, which is to pass an event handler function from the component that owns the state, so this one, right into a component that wants to actually update that state. So in this case, that's star. So we can make that even more explicit if we want. So we can say function handle rate or handle rating maybe. And then here we accept a rating, and all we do is then set rating, well, to that rating that we receive. And then here we can use that handle rating function. And so with this, we created a similar pattern to what we have done all the time. So creating a handler function in the component that owns the state, and then passing that handler function into some other child component which will actually update the state. Now here we are actually passing this function here, so not just this one, because here we need to fix the value of the rating that we want to be set for each star. Okay, that was a lot of explanation. Let's just reload here. And now as I click, you see that the state does indeed update. All right, so that's already working. And yeah, if this was a bit difficult for you to understand, then you can, as always, just pause the video here and analyze the code on your own. So what we did here is actually a bit similar to what we did in previous exercises. For example, I think in the accordion exercise, we did something very similar. Okay, and now to finish, what I want to do is to display only the amount of stars equal to the rating in full and all the other stars empty. So just like here. So here, if I click on a 5, then you see that 5 stars are full and the other ones are empty. And so here, let's now quickly do exactly the same thing. So we already have that other empty star right here. And so now we want to basically conditionally render either the full or the empty star. So let's grab this here. Let's cut it actually. And then here, let's enter JavaScript mode. So we will want to have a prop here for the star that says if this star is full. So we will take care of that later. But for now, let's just say if the star is full, then render this part, so that SVG element, and if not, then render this one. All right, and so now of course full is undefined because we are not passing it in, and therefore all of the stars are empty right now. So how do we define whether a star is full or not? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So full should basically be a true or false value, right? That's why this conditional rendering here works. So again, when full is true, then this one will be rendered, and if it's false, then the empty star. So here we just want to now write a condition basically that will always be either true or false. So all we have to do is to say, is the current rating greater or equal I plus 1, which is always the rating for the currently generated star. And you see that immediately that worked here. Great. So let's again see why this actually works. So it all starts with this I variable right here. And so this comes from the index of the empty array that we create here with the length of max rating. So we create that array and then we immediately loop over it. And so then the first star that we create has the number 0. So this one is star 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We then use that index in order to handle our rating. So if we click on the very first star here, it will be 0 plus 1, and so it becomes 1. If we click on the third star here, well, then here the index is 2, and then 2 plus 1 makes 3. And so then the rating, as we see, is set to 3. And then, in order to determine whether a star is full or not, all we need to do is to compare the currently set rating to the index of the current star. So here the index is 0 plus 1, so here it's 1, here it's 2, here it's 3, 4, and 5. And so right now our rating is 3. And so here, of course, that 3 is greater than 1, here it's greater than 2, here it's greater or equal 3, and so it's still true, but then here it's of course false. So 3 is not greater or equal 4, and therefore this one here is then not full. So this condition will return false, which will then make the star being rendered as empty. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. And indeed, our component is now already almost working. All that is missing is this functionality of hovering the stars. And so let's take care of that in the next lecture.